about this leave of absence and asked several questions about it, and I'm just like, yeah, actually, can I withdraw? Actually, can I
How
withdraw?
about just we just gonna shut it all
We
down?
don't even
We
have
don't
to
even
do
have to.
any of this.
Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for being a part of this project. I am so excited to have you on the series. And so let's just go ahead and get into it. So I want to know what sparked like your creativity? Like, was there something like when you were younger or like growing up? It was just like, oh, I want to do that, or that looks cool.
Hmm. Well, first, thank you for inviting me here. I'm
Yeah.
happy to be here. I love your work. And I love how you're always pushing yourself. I think that's so important. And just honorable too. I feel like I never really acknowledged myself as a creative at all. Like I was in AP classes, I was in honor classes. Like I very much thought of myself as somebody who felt like if you were a creative, that necessarily didn't mesh with the intellectual space.
Yeah.
And you had to kind of choose one or the other. So I wouldn't say I feel like, I mean, all of us are creatives. Like as humans, we're creatives, and I feel like we just get some of that muffled or suffocated as we
Yeah.
like participate in this system of socialization into what we're supposed to be,
Yeah.
into professionals. So I feel like when I got to undergrad, I noticed myself just doing a lot of like reflection on who I was and where I had come from and who I wanted to be. And I think a lot of that came through the format of poetry.
Mm.
And as I started writing poems, one day I was at a poetry workshop randomly, and it was a poet there. His name is Rudy. It's a black man named Rudy Francisco.
Oh, I like that
Um,
name.
I'm like, I know his name. It's Rudy Francisco. And he
Mhm.
was doing a workshop, spitting some of his poems and stuff. And some of the workshop was just about like, how to build your poems out.
Yeah.
And I was there, and he had called some people up to present some of their poems. And one of the people was me. And so I went up there and I did read the poem that I had just like wrote. And
Mhm.
this girl was in the audience who I kind of passed before on campus, but never really connected with.
Okay.
And she pulled me aside after that, and she's like, "I'm trying to start this poetry group, and your poem like what you wrote is perfect. And if you just did that freehand, like in here, then I know you got some heat cooking, basically,
Yeah.
and you should like come and get with the winning team, essentially." And I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And this was my senior year of college.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, yeah. And by that point, I had played like some club sports and done some different things and been in different organizations. So this
Okay.
was felt like my first time really being able to like see what I could do creatively. And I loved being a part of that group. It's called the Black Box Project.
Oh,
I felt like it was such a life-changing experience for me to think of myself as a creative, as a writer, as somebody who could impact others by what I had to say and how I presented it.
mhm.
And that kind of started me in a space of thinking of myself, I think, a little more as a creative than I ever had before.
I don't feel like you have a particular title. Like, I know you're
Mm.
very much like artist, of course, but I've never just been able to like, I don't want to say like put you in a box, but like be like, this is Erin. And
This is her lane. Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I feel like you're very much like, I waved a paintbrush and this is what, came out of it. And that's just like how it's flowed throughout your
Yeah.
process and your career. Growing up, uh and like with your parents and everything, like was the expectation to, like have a regular 9 to 5 job or like a corporate job? And like was that since where you are now, like how did your like family and like friends like take that? Were they like, what? Like, no, you're supposed to live your life in the societal way, not doing all these like wild things,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
how do we depict you?
Well, important thing to know about me is I essentially have always been the same person my whole life, which means I do whatever the hell I want whenever I want. And
Yeah.
that I think makes it really difficult for parents to parent a child. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And I've always been very stubborn about what it is that I want to do, even when I didn't necessarily have all the pieces together. Like I knew I would figure it out.
Mhm.
And I feel like when I transitioned, as I was transitioning through grad school, and the goal was kind of to get a 9 to 5 or to get a job that made sense on paper or seemed like it was kind of in the same trajectory of what I was doing. I
Yeah.
think my parents specifically and family understood that. Um, and both my parents were in the military, so the coming from a military space is a very different understanding of doing what you because doing what you have to do to get where you have to go. And they come from
Mhm.
poor families or families that were just kind of, at least when they were younger, scraping by to get by.
Yeah.
And or scraping up coins and money to get by. And so they, from very young age, made a decision to do what they had to do financially to get where they needed to go, right? And that looked like a lot of structure for them. That looked like a lot of 9 to 5 for them.
Mhm.
And my mom has worked basically in the same kind of office, worked her way up, but worked
Yeah.
in the same office for, I want to say, probably 10 to 15 years, if not longer.
Okay.
So, me choosing to leave my PhD, I don't think they understood it, but I also didn't give them an opportunity to feel like it was their decision.
Mm.
Um, because it's not their decision. And I knew, and how I make all my decisions is when I feel confident about what I want to do, I know it's going to work out, and I know I'm going to figure it out, and I'll
Right.
find the resources to get it. And when I told my friends, it was almost a no-brainer, but your friends know you intimately and in different ways than your
Yeah.
family does sometimes.
Mhm.
So for them, it was like, yeah, in whatever way. But also, I think your parents like financially want you to be secure, so
Yeah.
one, you don't become a burden on them, but two, so you can live the life that you want to live. I think your parents really want that for you.
Yeah.
Whereas your friends don't have as much obligation to that. They're like, well, you ain't got your bill money this week, girl.
You know, you got it. You
Where
good.
parents
Yeah.
feel, yeah, I think parents feel a lot more obligation to making sure you have what you need and the resources that you need to just survive.
Mhm.
So I'm very blessed and lucky to have a friend group who has also provided financial support for me when I have needed it, who have been able to like support me in different ways, emotionally,
Mhm.
mentally, as I have navigated transitioning out of the PhD and into this full-time entrepreneur space, because
Mhm.
it is difficult, but it isn't something that I think is for everybody, and it has a lot of question marks around what does it mean to be an entrepreneur and
Mhm.
to do things for yourself. And especially right now, when I think so much of my work is also freelance, it's not like I have a sound business like you're saying, where it's like this is
Yeah.
the one thing Erin does and Erin makes 6 figures every year doing this. It's like I make 6 figures a year doing all of these different things, and that can
Yeah.
be hard to explain for somebody who has worked a 9 to 5 their
Mhm.
whole life, and it has been and looked a very clear cut way.
Right.
um so yeah, I don't know that they wanted me to have this job, but at the end of the day, I think my parents want me to be happy,
Right.
and I think they want me to figure out the ways that I can be happy. And as long as I can survive and support myself doing what makes me happy, I think that they're all for it.
What was it like transitioning? Because I know you mentioned about with like your PhD. What was that like transitioning out of the school, like the college world, and into like just being like, yep, you know what, I'm gonna be a full-time entrepreneur. Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
So for me, the transition has been because I have that mentality. Also, because I didn't have a terrible experience in my PhD, I just got to a point where I realized, again, I'm feeling very torn in between. This is what I'm interested in, and this is what I've already agreed or signed up for. So I was in a PhD for an education program in educational studies,
Mhm.
and in that, like, sure, there's some flexibility to do some film stuff. Sure, there might be some flexibility to talk about, Black women and Black girls. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But it got to be like some of the things that I was very, very interested in, which is like interiority and the ways we feel about our insides, and not our organs, but our spirit, and the way that we listen to who we are
Mhm.
as an individual person.
Mhm.
It wasn't necessarily aligning with, the educational studies research and what was already existing, and it just was out of the scope of the discipline, essentially. And I felt like I was going to have to start contorting a lot and to get what I was interested in
Mhm.
to this space to fit into what I had already kind of agreed into doing in the program, and what research was even possible, because in academia, like, there's room for new and exploration and discovery and shifting things a little bit in the humanities, but it's like only so much at a time,
Mhm.
and I was ready to blow it up with with the ideas that I had, and it wasn't the right space. And I realized, like, for me, I could spend a lot of time fighting against the system, trying to make the things that I wanted, or I could leave and make the things that I wanted without having to fight against anyone or go against any sort of opposite current. It's just like, here's all of the space and the time and the people, and finding the resources that want to create these, that
Every
anyone was
thought.
against me in my PhD program. I think there were a lot of people who actually supported my work and wanted to see it grow. It was just that what I had envisioned for it and the capacity for what it actually could be looked different.
Mhm.
And I also knew that I got to a point where I wanted to take my intellectual work and I wanted to make it very accessible to people who weren't inside of the academy, because a lot of what we write isn't accessible.
Mhm.
And the audience that I'm talking to is Black girls and Black women more often than not. And if
Right.
that's the case, there's another disconnect between what I say I'm interested in doing and what is actually happening with having to write these high level theoretical papers that
Mhm.
nobody's actually reading. I have papers that none of my friends have read, already. And not because they don't love me, but it's just like, what is this, sis? I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And then people could say, well, you could take that and you could chunk it up. That's a whole nother process. I want to make the accessible content off bat. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
So transitioning for me has been relatively easy in that regard,
Mhm.
because I already knew what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
I already was ready. I had already felt ways. I was like, here, if I had the time, space, and energy to do things, this is how it's gonna go. The hardest part is just the financial instability that comes with being a freelancer and entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm used to having a check coming every 2 weeks or at the end of the month, every month, for the
Mhm.
last however long I've been in college, which has been since I've been, so basically 10 years of school. I have a I have an undergraduate degree, I have a master's, and I was in 2 years of my PhD program. So I've been in school for a good little amount of time. And that check was very nice. It was very
Mhm.
nice and very consistent.
Yeah.
And so now I think I actually end up making more money than I made before. I know that I'm making more money than I made before monthly, but it's a different level of pressure, to have to go out and pitch or propose ideas and make sure that income is coming, versus I'm already getting this check and I know this check is coming and I just have to kind of uphold responsibilities. Now I have to constantly prove that I
Mhm.
can do these things, which
Yeah.
I think for me was something that I needed anyway. Like,
Mhm.
I've been saying I ran out of excuses in 2021.
Mhm.
I don't have any room for any more excuses. And I think being an entrepreneur for me made that shift from where I could kind of fall back on other excuses or reasons on why I may have not been as successful, or why things weren't as good or whatever. And now I'm like, you can't do that when you work for yourself. It's
Yeah.
that you don't have the same leeway. You don't have, it's like, you say what you want to say, make the excuses you want to say, but when you ain't got the money to pay your rent, whose fault is that?
That part. Yeah.
Whose fault is that? Okay. And so I'm like, being an entrepreneur and stepping into this, I think the biggest transition from the PhD to now is like, and they're both, being in a PhD program is still very independent. Like, you have coursework in the beginning, but there's a lot of it that is very independent work. So I was already like an independent worker in that regard,
Mhm.
but it's just a different level of pressure now. The pressure that's good for me.
Mhm.
But it's still pressure nonetheless. It's still
Yeah.
it's still pressure.
I totally relate to you on that regard. Like, And even like being a full-time creative, like I've experienced that, like even going through like doing this series and like this whole process. So like even doing that as well, to just kind of like branch out and like explore other things and not let, like, yes, the finance is there and like that adds pressure, but also just kind of saying, you know what, like you say, just try and be like, all right, well, okay, we're gonna have to tweak that, come back and make the adjustment.
Yes.
From transitioning to from out of like the college and like PhD um space, now that you're in like where you are now, like did you have a project or something that came along that you were like, oh, I'm finally, like, I'm really doing like what I sought out to do, like this is the, reason why I jumped, that like really related to you or like connected with you, like you felt seen or something, if that makes sense?
Ooh, today, literally before this interview. I mean, all the time for sure.
Yeah.
But today, and I think Black Girls Been Theory and Been Theory campaign, which is something I had started while I was in the PhD program, in an effort to figure out how can I make some of the things I'm learning in my
Yeah.
research more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Today I got a call from a client wanting me to create content and be a creative strategist for her, who has seen my work on and my photography for fat Black queer women, and was like, sought me out because of one, knowing that I had left my PhD, so knowing that I had an intellectual and a background in scholarly research, and she's a
Yeah.
very intellectual woman. She does a lot of dope ass work,
Mm-hmm.
but she's trying to bridge the gap basically between some of the high level theory that she's kind of already entangled in or sees
Mm-hmm.
herself in, and making it more accessible to build her audience and to be seen as a thought leader in her industry.
Yeah.
And I felt like so seen in the work that I had been doing, because she reached out to me. I didn't pitch to her, and I
Yeah.
didn't know what we're gonna call about. She just booked a consultation a few days ago and was like, yeah, I found your link and we're gonna be talking. I'm like, okay, looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah.
And when we got on the call, she started talking. I said, holy shit, like you did your research on me, like
Yeah. Oh
you. And I've also, like, I used her space to direct and film and produce a short form piece of content for another brand. So that's how we had originally kind of passed through, because I
yeah.
had to go through her to book it and stuff. And she was just talking about how professional I was, how much of a boss bitch that she thought I was, and I was just on my shit and
Mhm.
all of that. So she was observing me, which is wild, because she wasn't really around while we were shooting. It was in a house, so she was kind of
Yeah.
upstairs in a room while we were utilizing the space, and
Mhm.
she thought I was so professional. And which for me, it's in a cannabis house, which is the Copper House Detroit.
Oh, okay.
So for me, for to hear another Black woman saying what I'm doing by just being me, by cussing when I want to cuss, dressing how I want to dress,
Yeah.
showing and being like, my full self in a space,
Mhm.
is considered professional, is considered boss bitch, is considered like somebody who is capable of doing work that she would want to pay me significant dollars to do.
Yeah.
And then, so not just in like, okay, you can do the work,
Mhm.
but also like from an intellectual standpoint, she valued what I was trying to do. And I don't really know if there's ever been another woman or person who has said as clearly and specifically to me what she said, which is, I think you capture fat queer Black women so beautifully, and as a fat queer Black woman, I feel basically seen by
Yeah.
the work that you have done. Like, she said, I capture them from an ethic of care. And that's something that I intend to do for all of my clients, right? It's
Yeah.
something that I'm very intentional about for all of my clients, but specifically with that Black women, because I understand how vulnerable and difficult it is to see yourself as beautiful in front of a camera lens when everyone in the world is telling you that you're not.
Yeah.
And I just felt so seen by that, and I knew that she understood me from like a deep core human place,
Yeah.
and she could see my intentionality from a human place, and
Mhm.
also my talent, for to not just want to do it, but also to be able to execute it, and her to just go on my website and say, damn,
Yeah.
like,
Like that's
look at the
huge.
ways you've been, look at the ways you've been capturing other women who look like me, and I can see I feel like you would capture me and make me feel these different ways. So I feel
Yeah.
like that is probably one of the first times where I feel like fully seen.
Mm,
And then and in the work that I am trying to do, which is like a fusion between where I see myself as a researcher and a scholar and also an artist.
yeah. Yeah. That is so cool. And that is so bizarre. Like when someone can like go to you and be like, "Dit, dit, dit," you like, oh my God, who taught how did you? And they've been watching
Yeah,
you the whole time
the whole time, which
and
means
didn't
that
even know
I'm
it.
doing what I'm supposed to do. Like
Yeah.
I've been doing what I'm supposed to do. And as she was trying to say she wants to be known as a thought leader, I'm like, you know me as that,
Yeah.
which is so cool because it's not anything that I'm actively trying to do. I just know what my mission is in my artwork. And because, caring about women's bodies fully
Yeah.
and in the rawness of our bodies is a big component of that.
Hmm.
She was able to see herself in that work.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so like, cause I'm a thick girl too, and I'm black and they be
And
showing
it's
all the
hard.
little people and I be like, I don't look like them. I
Exactly,
this. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think some of the photographs she's talking about is where I'm photographing Black women who are either probably in lingerie, fat Black women who are either in lingerie or nude.
Hmm.
So it's like, not only am I finding ways to photograph their bodies while they're clothed, which is enough sometimes for some people to be in front of a camera,
Yeah.
but while they're removing these kind of exterior layers of themselves
Yeah.
that are represented by clothes, and that is a whole nother category of photography that I think is difficult, right? Like
Mhm.
kind of that boudoir space
Yeah.
where I wouldn't say that I'm ever trying to sexualize my clients. I just want to show that they are sexy.
Mhm.
Um, and so to do that, not just with people who are written and seen and perceived as by society as sexy and beautiful and pretty and are meeting the societal standards of what beauty should be, but people who are actively on the opposite end of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're beautiful too.
Mm.
And it's about rewriting like and paying attention to those binaries. So I'm like, damn, she sees that.
Yeah.
Yes, you see me.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
right. Like, you get it. It's like finally seeing somebody is like, oh, you get it. You get it. Because I've been following you for a little while now, and I have always been so. I'm always like, oh, Erin either gonna like make me some good food, or she gonna like give me a little booty, and I'm like, okay, girl, she definitely gonna show
I've
real
been
because she
not
don't
been
care.
given enough booty pics lately. I need to step it up.
Haven't. I would like to submit a request from the Big Booty Crew that we would like more booty moments. Thank you. Uh, but I love how you celebrate, like whether it's your body, someone else's body, and it's literally like this is how we're made, and it's so unapologetic. Whether you twerking in the video, whether you just showing something quick, or someone else, and then I would say, especially as another thick girl, I feel like you do such a beautiful display of like us, our bodies, however shape, shade, whatever. There was a shoot you did. I don't even remember the person's name. And it was a fat girl. She was in lingerie. I think it was like she had like black lingerie and it was
Yeah,
glittery. And I
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
oh my, is that a stretch mark? That's a roll. She got like five. I got like six of them too, girl. Like it was the first time where I was just like, it was so raw, but it was just so like it felt so real, if that makes sense. I feel like oftentimes like there have been like displays of like the body, but then it's like it's still gonna
yeah.
be like in the accepting
Exactly.
category
And
and
what's
not like,
acceptable. Yes.
girl,
When you
like a
see curvy
TK.
girls,
Hmm.
yes, when you see curvy girls, like especially like through fashion and stuff,
Hmm.
when you see thicker girls, they still have a curvy body, right?
Yeah.
But it's like everybody isn't curvy.
Mm-mm.
everybody isn't curvy, and those bodies are deserving of love
Yeah.
and being showcased as
Mm-hmm.
well, just because they aren't curvy. And it's like there's tons of people's bodies, even in the size 0 through 12 range, like
Right.
that aren't curvy. It's just, they're not hourglass shaped. They might
Right.
be more. That's why you have pear, you have orange shape, you have apple shape, you got all the different fruits that describe the bodies. And
Yeah.
then when we see curvy people represented, they might be, a size 4X, but they still are either wearing something that's kind of snatching them at the waist, pulling them in, or something like that, to give this look of, oh, it has to be this perfect hourglass look. And
Right.
I never want my clients to feel like they have to be anybody other than themselves to
Mhm.
be beautiful, to feel
Yeah.
beautiful in any regard.
Biggest question for you is what is the process of how Erin creates? Because Erin be creating,
Oh,
and
oh,
I'm always like, how did she do that? Like, how did she know? Or like, was she just like, man, it's been cooking for a little bit? Like, how long do it marinate? Because you cook for real in real life, but I know
yes,
you cook for real in real life. But I know
yes.
with like your creative side, like I'm like, I know that was marinating because that came out too good. Like that was real nice. I like it here.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you for seeing me and acknowledging.
Yeah.
I feel like my creative process is very much like an oven and a stove, right? Like there are different burners that you use for different things, especially if you're imagining yourself cooking something that's like a 3 or 4 course meal, or
Hmm.
just you have multiple sides, like you put things in different places at different times, you throw
Yeah.
it in the oven for different reasons. And I feel like my cooking process is my creative process is very much like that. Like
Mhm.
some things are on simmer or in that crock pot kind of mode where you're going to have them there for 12 hours. You're going to have it there overnight, right? That might
Yeah.
be something like I'm working on things now. I think Ben Theory is something that has, before I dropped it, which was around this time last year,
Hmm.
it was in my mind even maybe about 6 months to 8 months before that, as just like a
Yeah.
thought, and I just let it. When I have thoughts that aren't fully fleshed out, I keep talking about them with people.
Yeah.
I'll keep bringing them up with people I care about and who I can trust with my ideas and stuff, and it'll just kind of keep being a thing that I realize will keep coming up. And then once it comes up enough, I'm like, this is something, let me figure this out. I might switch the burner. I might switch it to something
Yeah.
maybe more
Yeah.
we're sauteing now. You got to pay a little more attention to it, but
Right.
it can still kind of do its thing for a little bit.
Hmm.
And I feel like um I for my creative process, I try to think about what all I have going on and what things kind of make sense in the grand scheme of those things. And so, it is like for me, everything is an influence, but
Hmm.
it's also like I am actively inspired by myself,
Hmm.
and I'm actively just as much as I'm inspired by other things like shows I'm
Yeah.
watching and random things. I'm like, and it might not even be exactly related to Black girls or Black women or creative process, but I'm like, I love this shot.
Yeah.
I absolutely, like, I'm watching Succession. I don't even know if there's a Black person in Succession on HBO. And
I
I'm like,
started watching that
oh,
too.
oh my God, it's so good. It's one of my favorite shows. I'm like, oh my God, I love this shot. I love the way they're storytelling. I love the way they're thinking about the lighting and what's going on and how they're layering people in the scene and all of this. And so I'm like, what can I use this for? And what projects do I already have that I can
Yeah.
like be adding these elements? So I'm like, my creative process in short is like, is about always taking notes so that I can
Mhm.
then go back and apply the notes when they are relevant.
Yeah.
And then giving my ideas space to breathe and feed into depending on where I'm at with them. So right now, I have a couple of things cooking,
Mhm.
and a couple of things that are going to be coming this year.
Mhm.
And I am like constantly working on them and thinking about them and processing them. But I'm like, I'm never gonna drop things until I feel like they don't have to be fully fleshed out and like perfect, right? Because we can
Yeah.
get stuck there. But
Mhm.
more so like until I feel like they're in a place where it's like this can get a good amount of my attention and
Mhm.
it's ready. Like I'm
Yeah.
ready to share this and put behind the energy into this, that it deserves to live the life that it needs to live. So um Yeah, it's a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
honestly. It's a whole lot of YouTube. It's a whole lot of watching other people, like I said, and taking a lot of notes. I'm like I use Instagram like I use YouTube now,
Yeah.
not in the search category, but like your content, for example. I'm like, I love how Bria lit that product and there's a shadow on the back. And I like how the water is flowing down in this way, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, even though I'm not doing shit with product shots right now, I'm like, yes, I am interested in this, right?
Yeah.
So in 6 months, when something happens and I'm like, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z, I'm like, in my mental Rolodex of notes, or sometimes actual written notes,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, I'm pulling this and I'm pulling this and I'm
Yeah.
pulling this. Like I'm always pulling from all of these different things that I've seen to
Mhm.
create something, and always pulling a lot of references to create something.
Yeah.
So that what I have, I feel like what I've created can live a life, a full life I have right now, and make the most out of it. And what have I already seen that has been successful in doing something similar, and how can I create that and still make it unique to me,
Yeah.
but also something that other people might be interested in seeing and looking at. And if you check the trend right now, everybody loves the VHS filter, so clearly I'm a trendsetter.
Yeah. Right. Clearly you were already onto something. Yeah, because some stuff I'd be like, I already saw somebody do that and you late, because they did that like 6 months ago, a year,
Whatever you do that feels true to you, just stay consistent at it, and it's gonna get you where you want to go.
So for the upcoming years, what will Erin be creating? Is there a sneak peek we can get, or like a trailer or something? Like I did see you on a set of something. I do be trying to. I have this theory. So I have this theory that every time you show food, it is your way, especially when you showing something like simmering or like marinating. I'm like, that's code for something, y'all. Y'all watch.
You're on to me.
I don't know what it is.
You're on to me.
But when she shows the food, she always drops something fire within the next like couple weeks or so. She never says a date, but I'm very certain the food is key. Focus on the food. It'd be looking good as hell. But
listen, Bria, honestly, you're on to something. Focus on the food.
Yeah.
Focus on the food. That's all I'll say for now. Focus on the food. I do have, like I said, some things cooking for sure. Ben Theory has some things that will be coming this year. Absolutely.
Because I be watching stuff and I'm like, I think I know her thing. I'm like, what is it called? They call it the Easter egg. I'm like, I think I know her Easter egg.
Well, we hop off. I'm like, what's my egg? Hold on. We gotta go. Get off. End the call.
Can the people find you?
Perfect. You can find me at Erin Be Creating on Instagram. You can find me at erina.com. You can find me at Erin Is Creating on Instagram as well. So Erin Be Creating is my more personal page. Both are public, and then Erin Is Creating is where I try to be more intentional about placing just my work. So yeah, you can find me either way, and in either location you'll find my bio in my bio on my website.
Thank you so much for being a part of the series.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I love chatting with you and talking with you about all the things, and I look forward to seeing what you come out with next.
Period.
Listen, y'all, I got a secret. I've been working on this idea for a long time, and it's finally time to bring it to y'all, because y'all know anywhere I go, y'all coming with me, okay? If you interested in what this project is, what is Erin creating, who is she creating it with, click the link in the bio. You deserve the tea, and I'm gonna give it to you.